There's a part of our brain designed to hold us back. There's a part of our mind built to keep us from growing and making progress. And I call this part resistance. And it's this brick wall that we hit anytime that we want to do something. We can't, no matter how much we want to do it. So now I talk about this concept of internal resistance and this part of us that holds us back from doing something, even when we know what to do and want to do it.
Welcome back to Shine In and Out, the space where science meets soul. I'm your host, Sammy Stoltz, and today we're talking about something universal. Internal resistance. It's that strange moment when you know what you want, you even feel the fire to go after it, and somehow you stall. It's like pressing the gas pedal with one foot while the other jams the brakes. And our guest today is Kam Knight, a coach, thinker, and traveler of both the world and the human mind. And together we're going to unpack why resistance isn't a character flaw, but a messenger, and how shifting our relationship with it can unlock new levels of freedom. Welcome, Kam. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Samantha. I am really happy to be here.
I'm so excited to learn more about what you do. So if you could share a little bit about your journey to where you got to where you are today.
Sure. I'll do that. So I'll just start by talking about who I am. My name is Kam Knight. I am a mentor, international speaker, and author of a dozen books in the area of mental, physical, and emotional performance. And as far back as I can remember, I've been a fairly driven individual. And what I usually say is it's kind of hard not to be living in this culture and society where there is just so much personal development content and everyone is always telling you to do more and be your best self and reach for the stars. And as a result, I've always wanted to do more and have more and be more in life. And although I have had my fair share of success, I always felt like I fell short, missed the mark, or the success was much more difficult and stressful than it needed to be. And I always wondered why that was. Why is it if I want to do something, I know what to do, I know how to do it, and I have the motivation and desire to do it, but for some reason I can't or don't do it? And at the time, there were no real answers. The best answers that I was coming across were related to beliefs or limiting beliefs or that you needed to have motivation. And I think those are important keys, but I always felt like there was more to it. And over the last 15 years, that question lingered in my mind. Every time I felt stuck, I wondered why. Why can't I get stuff done? Why do I keep spinning my wheels? Why don't I just do this dang thing so I can get the result that I want? And the more books I read, coaching I did, and seminars I attended, the more I learned about the complexities of the human brain. And over time, my mind started to be like, hey, wait a minute. There's a part of our brain designed to hold us back. There's a part of our mind built to keep us from growing and making progress. And I call this part resistance. And it's this brick wall that we hit anytime that we want to do something, but we can't, no matter how much we want to do it. So now I talk about this concept of internal resistance and this part of us that holds us back from doing something, even when we know what to do and want to do it.
Interesting. So,
Yeah,
I mean, I'm sure some of that is evolutionary, right?
yeah,
Like our brains are wired to keep us safe and protected, and what's new is scary and potentially dangerous. So
yeah,
I I think you're absolutely right. Um,
yeah.
but I'm curious because, of course, I have heard of the alternatives that you spoke about. What differentiates the internal resistance from the belief system or the lack of motivation?
So it really helps to understand that the part of the brain that creates wants and desires, it works separately from the part that actually allows us to act on the desire. So this is really important. The part of the brain that is creating our wants works independent of the part that actually allows us to act on the want. So we have one part of the mind that's creating wants, And it's more or less creating endless wants, one after another, at a pace faster than any one person can achieve. So, this part of the brain, its purpose isn't to see if the want is useful, valuable, achievable, or even like realistic. It just creates wants. And like I said, it'll just create wants all the time. And then we have another part of the brain that actually evaluates that want. And this is the part that checks to see if you have the time, energy, and resources. And so anytime a decision or desire stands before you, that decision gets evaluated by this part of the brain using a whole host of criteria. And if the decision is not in line with the criteria, the brain or resistance will prevent action. So what's really important to understand is our brain can both create a desire for something and at the same time hold us back from it. And I used to think whoever created humanity, whether it was God, aliens, or evolution, must have been really sick and twisted because how could they do this to us? Create these burning desires and then keep us from going after it. But when you look at it from this perspective, it makes perfect sense. Because, like I said, the part that creates wants is just creating wants. And it doesn't really have too much of a reasoning. It's really triggered by different stimuli. So if it sees someone with nice shoes, it wants it. A new car drives by, it wants that too. We see something on television, we want that as well. But then we have another part that is actually checking the wants. So a great analogy for this is imagine a kid in a candy store. That is our wanting mechanism. It just wants everything. But then the parent is like resistant, keeping that child in check. And so that's what's really going on. So when people want something and they can't have it, or they feel like their progress is slow, or there's a part of them holding them back, a lot of times they will think that it's because it's them, or they don't have what it takes, or they're not good enough. But I want them to push that thinking to the side and realize it's just there's a part that is saying, no, this isn't good. You won't have the time. It won't be safe and things of that nature. Now, to answer your question, when resistance evaluates the desire, it goes through a whole host of criteria. So by this, it helps to think about standing before a panel of judges or board of directors. Every time a decision comes up, it must go through all of them. And every member must agree to it, otherwise it won't pass. So what are the criterias? Well, limiting beliefs is one of the criterias. If a person has beliefs that what they're trying to do is not possible, or if they think it's possible, but deep down they don't think it's possible for them, then resistance will kick in and either stop us from doing it or make progress much slower and harder than it needs to be. But there are other criterias that are also evaluated. For example, resistance will check if what we're trying to do goes against our habits. If we don't have the habits to support the behavior, more or less, we're going to be stopped dead in our tracks. The same thing with comfort zones. And beliefs, habits, and comfort zones are kind of the more traditionally talked about concepts in personal development. But I want to kind of go a little bit deeper than that. Another thing that gets evaluated is self-image. So a lot of people have a self-image of being cool, smart, or tech savvy, but they won't apply themselves or put themselves out there because if things don't go well, they have to confront the fact that they're not as cool, smart, and tech savvy as their self-image is said to be. And so a lot of times it's much easier to not do the thing and hold on to the self-image than to do it and possibly prove the self-image wrong. So resistance will come up if we're trying to do something that might damage our self-image. But then it goes even deeper than that. This is something a lot of people experience, especially in this country and culture, which is authority issues. Authority issues relate to our unconsciously held attitudes toward authority figures such as parents, principals, priests, police officers, and even personal development mentors like ourselves. And so what happens is when we're growing up, if we were constantly told what to do and not to do and how to do it and not how to do it, over time the brain gets fed up and it doesn't want to do anything. It doesn't want to listen to the authorities in our lives. But here's a kicker. Even when we do grow up and we want to do these things, we actually ourselves want to do what the authorities told us because oftentimes what they told us was useful and beneficial. We still can't do it because this authority issue response comes in. But then it can go even deeper than that. There's a concept of the inner child. So, as we're growing up, if we experience things like trauma or abandonment, we have this inner child, and it seems like an abstract concept, but when I take people into their unconscious, it comes up quite a bit, where it's still living inside us. And when we try to have success or move forward in life, it feels as threatened as it did when we were a kid, that it'll be abandoned. And so that inner child will actually hold us back from having success. And so these are just a few criteria I mentioned. In my work, I found there's over a good 2 dozen to 30 criterias that our brain is filtering through to make a decision. And I know I'm kind of talking a lot, but I just want to set the stage for how resistance work. And I'll just say one more thing. And it's that we've all noticed people who can think about doing something and then just do it. Life just seems to move really easily and fluidly for them. Whereas for ourselves, it's like much more difficult. We try to do the same thing they do. And not only do we have a much harder time, but we can't even do it. Well, it's not because they have some magic ability. It's just that when a desire comes up for them, and their resistance filters through it, they don't have as many resistance going on. They don't have things like limiting beliefs. They don't have issues with going out of their comfort zone. Their self-image is aligned with what they're trying to do. And so they can go from decision to action. Now, for the people who do struggle, it's often because when they have that same desire, they have all these things going on internally that it pushes up against. And so a lot of times people will hear, oh, you need to have positive beliefs, and they'll work on their beliefs. And some people, when they work on their beliefs, they have the success that they're looking for, but the other people still stay stuck. And then they go, well, that doesn't work. Well, it works. It's just that they had other resistance that the first person didn't. So then they got to go through other things. And this is what makes being human both challenging and at the same time exciting because, it's like working through these things. But the challenging part is, we have all these criterias that a lot of it doesn't even get talked about. I'm sure you really didn't hear too much about authority issues in prior podcast guests or at all. I mean, this was a concept that took me a long time to actually come across.
Makes total sense.
Yeah, and then the inner child stuff, it's getting more talked about right now, but not as much, especially in mainstream personal development. But then, like I said, there's even deeper things that are going on.
That was a really great background. I feel like everybody will have a really good understanding of what's going on here. Some of the things that came up for me, first of all, you always felt that it was harder than it needed to be, and you always
Yeah,
felt that you were falling short. There's definitely an agreement, with society that we all have that
yeah,
there has to be something done. Like, being idle is not okay. And I wonder if the society is an authority type of form where people have that same type of resistance to, why do I have to be doing all of the time? Why can't I just
yeah.
be? What
Yeah,
do you think about that?
there's definitely that playing out. So our authority issues operate on many levels. Uh, I'm just it doesn't just come from like parents and teachers and the school system or principals. It really comes down to anyone who tells you or makes you feel obligated to do something. And so it can come societally, it can come from even person development, because, a lot of person development is giving this message of do more and be your best self and reach for the stars. And then a lot of times that's very inspiring and we do get motivated to do more, but then we aren't able to move forward, or we get stuck, or we get blocked, and then we get upset. And then when we hear that message again, the authority issues kicks in, and it's like, ugh, like I would just want to live my life and I'm going to do what I want when I want. So this authority issue is actually huge. And again, I think it's a lot more prevalent in this culture than a lot of other cultures I have visited. I've traveled to over 100 countries. And it does come up when we are told to do things. And I'll go a little bit deeper into it. We're told to do things, and either we don't get the result that we were told we would get if we did it. Two, a lot of times we're doing it to get the love and affection of the authorities in
Mm.
our lives. And when we do it and we still don't get it, we get upset. So if our parents say, clean your room, study, and things like that, oftentimes we will do it so we can get their attention and their love. But when we don't receive it, a part of the brain gets upset. And it's like, well, what's the point of doing it if I'm not getting that thing that I wanted? And this is all happening unconsciously. We don't realize what we're actually seeking and what we're not getting and why we're actually upset. The authority issue just kicks in, and then we don't want to do it. And then what ends up happening is we don't ever want to do it. What I tell people is that we can hold resentment to our graves. And what's really crazy is that with authority issues, we may have been told we likely didn't do better in school because of all the teachers telling us to study. We are likely have issues with being on time because someone was on our case about being more timely. We are likely not focusing on diet and health because an overbearing father or mother wanted it so bad for us. But what's really interesting about authority issues, the opposite can also be happening. We may watch so much television and eat so much junk food to give the big FU to all the authorities who said it was bad for us. Or we still drink, smoke, and get high for those reasons. And a lot of times with the authority issues, it kicks in, like I said, without us knowing it. And a lot of times we're trying to either hurt our authority or outsmart them when we're doing what we're doing. So when we don't, but what I tell people is our authorities issues hurt no one else but ourselves. So when we don't listen to the teacher, it doesn't really hurt her grades, it hurts our grades. When we don't listen to our parents, it doesn't really affect their health or their success, it affects ours. And a lot of times we're trying to outsmart them saying, hey, I know you told me to do this, but I'm going to get the results without it or whatever. But oftentimes we just create a lot more unnecessary struggles for ourselves. And so these are these like complex things going on internally that no one's talking about, and is running our lives in like very unhealthy and destructive ways.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, I also think about so for me, I think I started with maybe a fear of failure.
Yeah.
And then as I was getting through that and developing, it doesn't matter if I fail, I'd rather try. And failing is learning, right? And growth. So then it became fear of success
Yeah.
because I don't want to be, I don't want people to know who I am. I don't want people to recognize me in the grocery store. Like, I love
Yeah.
my anonymity, all of that jazz.
Yeah.
So it's so interesting that your brain is always trying to protect you. Like you said, your prefrontal
Yeah.
cortex has all these big dreams, and then your
Yeah.
amygdala is like, whoa, that's not safe, you
Yeah.
know?
And I'm glad that
Uh,
you kind of pointed it to the parts of the brain, because really when I say, the part of the brain that creates wants works separately from the part that allows us to act, it's really these two parts. It's the prefrontal cortex as well as the amygdala, where one part is where the desires are coming from, and the other part is like analyzing the desire and going, okay, well, this is not what we want to do. Now, like also what you said, how it first came from this fear of failure. And then when you work through that, you hit up another criteria. And then now it was the fear of success. And I just want to kind of rip on that. So we get why the brain would create resistance due to failure. And it's pretty obvious the things that it's trying to protect us from when it comes to failure. Like it doesn't want us to waste time, energy, resources, and more importantly, anything that might cause us to injure or hurt ourselves. Though there's one aspect of failure that doesn't get talked about, and it actually comes down to feelings. And that's because failing or making a mistake is painful, very, very painful. The brain can release some really difficult to sit with and unpleasant feelings when we make a mistake or fail. So a lot of times, even though there's really no bad thing that could happen, like time, energy being wasted, but the brain will still create a fear of failure because of the feelings. And for some people, making mistakes and failings is much more painful than another person. And the more painful it is, the harder it is to do the thing and the more resistance that comes up. So this is where two people can do the same thing and one person will experience less resistance because if they're less sensitive to failures and mistakes, their brain isn't going to put as hard of a brake on that decision. But for a person where they do have more pain, more emotional pain, the brake is going to come much more sudden. And what's really interesting about mistakes and failures is that anytime we do something, there's tons of mistakes and failures. There's a lot of these micro mistakes and failures, like we may miss an appointment, like things that happened to us trying to do this podcast earlier. We may show up on time and things like that. Now, these things are minor, but for some people, their brain releases as intense and unpleasant feelings as with the big mistake. And because there's all these, there are multiple micro mistakes that can happen, it's just too much for the brain, or there's just too many possibilities of experiencing pain that it puts a brake in our lives. Now, if a person like yourself does, work through that part and can say, oh, wow, it's not really a big deal. Like, there's no issues in making the mistake, or it's not as big as my brain is making it seem. So we work through it. Now you're confronting fear of success. And what you're describing, the fear of success can come for many reasons, but what you're describing is a cause of resistance that comes up. I see it all the time of people wanting to be invisible. Like they don't want, because success, no matter what kind of success we're chasing, whether we're trying to work out and get fit, whether we're trying to have educational success, doing well in school, whether we're trying to make more money or get people to like us, it all brings us more exposure. Like when we get fit and healthy, we become more attractive and it creates more attention. When we're doing better, you know, peers and teachers notice it. When we're making more money, we just have to go out and create more clients and all that to do that. So it creates more exposure. And some people are actually very sensitive to the thoughts, judgments, and action and reactions of others. And if we're getting more exposure, that means we're exposed to more thoughts, judgments, actions, reactions of people, and it can become too much. It's kind of like the mistakes. Some people are more sensitive to mistakes. Some people are more sensitive to people. And so the more people that the success can put us around or the potential of exposure it gets, the more resistance will come up. Though I will say, like, when it comes to invisible, because this is a very specific resistance that does come up, is that it usually happens when we were growing up and we had an upbringing where the brain comes to the logic or belief people equals danger for whatever reasons. And if that happens, then the more we want to stay invisible. And the more invisible we try to be, the more we limit our success.
Absolutely. I mean, you really, in so many ways, have to train your brain. And I love what you're doing because it's telling people that there's nothing inherently wrong with them,
Yes.
that this is fixable if you want it enough. But of course, you have to do the work. And,
Yeah.
it's a journey. But I
Yeah.
mean, looking back on all of the work that I've done, it feels like no time at all. And it feels easy to jump to the more positive conclusion or whatever that may be. For instance, like comfort zone. I used to hold myself in that like a swaddled baby. Like I
Yeah.
loved comfort and I didn't want anything else. Why would it be worth it? But I kind of went on this journey where I learned all of my most impactful growth came from the depths of my
Yeah.
discomfort. And so now I've trained my brain to seek it and to go after it and to be excited about it because there truly is no such thing as time or energy wasted. And there's no such thing as failure because failure implies that you put yourself out there and you tried. And that is
Yeah.
more than half the population is doing. So it's a lot of reframing, right?
Yeah.
Um, I'm curious how you help people get to understand what is holding them back mentally. And because, of course, you can't fix something if you don't know
Yeah.
what's going on. So, how do you mentioned the bringing them into their unconscious, all of that stuff. What is your process with that?
Yeah. So to answer the question, I'm just gonna expand on a couple of things that you had said. One is you had said that a lot of times people will think that it's them. They think that they're lazy, they don't have what it takes, or something's wrong with them. Because there isn't a direct line of communication between the conscious and unconscious. Much of our unconscious is hidden from us, which is why it's called the unconscious. And so we don't see often how our unconscious activity is affecting our thoughts and behaviors. We just have these thoughts of like, don't do it, or I can't do it. And then it leads to these negative thinking. And again, it's not because you're lazy, don't have what it takes. It's that all these internal things are going on. So, how do I help my clients? Well, there's two ways. I have a course that I call Conquer Internal Resistance. And in it, it's a really deep dive into this concept that we're talking about. Right now, as deep as we've gone and all the different things we've talked about, it really just scratches the surface. So it goes into much more detail in terms of how our wants create our own resistance, because our wants can, interestingly enough, are the first place where resistance arises. And then I kind of explain all the different criteria the brain goes through. And once people can understand these criteria, they can start to see, oh, wow, it isn't me being deficient, it's these things going on. And as they learn about these criteria, they can feel that it's this, or they can feel is that another criteria. They know it in their being. Um, and then other criteria they might not resonate with. And then what's really important also about the concept of resistance is when the mind holds us back, it doesn't tell us that it's holding us back. It doesn't say, hey, Samantha, you know that thing that you're trying to do? Well, it pushes us up too much out of our comfort zone, so I can't let you do it. It doesn't say that. Instead, it just holds you back, and it actually uses manipulative tricks to hold us back. And the brain has all sorts of tricks up its sleeves. And most of the tricks, you wouldn't think of them as tricks, which is why they work so well and why we so easily fall for them. What I help people to do is understand when they're in resistance by noticing the tricks. And I'll just give one example of a trick. And I'll do that by sharing a powerful story. So, several years ago, I was in South Africa and I heard a woman give a speech about her journey of addiction. She described a pattern that addicts fall into that she herself fell into. And she said, Most addicts know what they're doing is wrong. When they're searching for the next hit, a part of them knows that they should stop, though a sneaky trick keeps them perpetually stuck in their addiction and keeps them from stopping. And that trick is that they tell themselves, after the next hit, I'll stop. After the next one, I'll stop. I just need to do it one more time, but after, I'll stop. And here's the thing, they keep saying it. After the next hit, I'll stop. I just need it one more time, but truly after, I'll stop. And when they say it, they truly believe that they will stop after the next one. In their mind, they're convinced after the next one they'll stop. But they keep saying it essentially for years and decades. And I bring this up because I know that you and your listeners are all doing this in some area of your life. A desire comes up, and in that moment, a thought surfaces that says, I'll do it later. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it this weekend. I'll do it next week. I'll do it next month, or I'll do it next time. And when we say it, we're convinced we'll do it later or next time, like absolutely convinced. But but when the later arrives, we push it off to the next and next until one of two things happens. One, we're married, have two kids, a stressful job, and as a result, no more time. And two, we either forget the goal or commitment. So it's really important for a person when they're hearing themselves say later or next to realize that it's a good chance it's a trick of their mind. Because if it wasn't, they would have done it later and next. And if they keep pushing it off, it's likely because there's some resistance there. Now, this is just one trick. There are dozens of other tricks the brain uses. In fact, I got to the point in life now where anything that's keeping me from doing what I want, I just assume it's a trick. And if we can see the tricks, we can understand that we might be in resistance. And if we can see how resistance is pulling us away, we are less likely to be pulled away. Some of the more commonly known tricks, I'm going to share this so people can resonate with what I mean by tricks, are your common distractions such as television, social media, video games, and doom scrolling. Like when we're doing those things, we know we should be doing something else, but we're not. But these other tricks are so deceptive that, like I said, we don't think of them as tricks, which is why they work so well. And for example, the trick of putting things off. There are people who are saying later and next their whole life. Their whole life they've been saying it. They had a desire from very young, maybe in high school, junior high, and they said, when I graduate from junior high or high school or college and whatever, that I'll do it, but they still haven't. And even though to this day they're saying later or next, they're absolutely convinced that the later that they say will be the one that they'll do when they'll do it, but they don't. So that's the other way I help people. So when I was doing my own work, because it took a lot of work to get to this point to have these knowledge, because I had a lot of resistance. I was like, okay, I got through this, and then I come across another one and another one and another one. In my journey, I had a lot of people telling me what my issue was and what I needed to do to solve it. And I would listen to them and I wouldn't get the results. And, I would get, and rightly so, I'd get upset. And then I realized if my issues are in my head, why don't I just go there for the answers? And so in my journey, I have developed a technique that helps people go into their unconscious. I figured out a way to disengage that barrier between the conscious and unconscious where they can see their own resistance. And we can work on their specific resistance to the specific task or goal that they have. Because we have resistance to a lot of things, but a lot of things we're not really interested in moving forward in. So we work on the specific areas. And a lot of these resistance actually have an emotional response. So when we do have resistance to comfort zone, it's this emotional response that comes up. When we do have resistance to people or what people are thinking, or the judgments and reactions, it's an emotional response. When we do have resistance to mistakes or even that authority issue, it comes as an emotional charge. And what I realize is if we can release the emotional charge or response, often the resistance subsides and to a point where they don't even realize it was an issue at one point. It's when a desire comes up, it just moves through to action or to the next resistance that we need to work on. And I think this is much better and more effective because working on resistance on a conscious level is very difficult. To constantly remind yourself, oh no, it'll be okay. Mistakes are necessary for growth. Like that's good and that's helpful. But every time you're pushing up against a mistake or a person and to having to do that, reframe, it's tiring and takes a lot of time. But if that didn't even come up, like the people I described where they can think and go to action, that's, I think, the more ideal way. And with this method that I've developed, that's how I'm able to do it for my clients. But that's more of a one-on-one work.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. Yeah, I mean, the brain is always going to take the easy route. Like,
Yeah.
we are programmed to do that, to save our energy in whatever way we can, and to avoid negative stimuli whenever we can.
Yeah.
And absolutely, procrastination isn't a time issue, it's an emotion issue. Because when
Yeah.
you're avoiding a task, it doesn't feel good. You have that doubt and that anxiety.
Yes.
And so your brain, your nervous system is like a short-term trick, and tells
Yeah.
you to let it go. And then that becomes an automatic habit because
Yeah.
of course you're going to take the easy way out. And the easy dopamine of being able to watch your TV, being able to scroll, being able to do all of those things, of course you're going to choose that because
Yeah.
you are programmed to get the dopamine as easily as possible. Like we used to have to hunt
I
and
know.
gather, and that's what would get us the dopamine, and that was a lot of work. So
Yeah.
if evolutionarily today we can get that much dopamine from just sitting there and literally just going like that,
Yeah. I
like
know.
of course
Literally
we're gonna
just
do it.
that.
Of course we're gonna do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But for me, I liked what you were saying about how you just keep saying later, 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 later.
Yeah.
And I totally
I
have
know
been
you're
doing
doing this,
that.
Samantha.
When
Yeah.
when when you were talking about it, it came up because last night I was saying I was saying, I know I need to rest. I have a lot going on. I know I need to like put time aside to like force myself to rest,
Yeah.
but I'll do it when I get back from my trip.
Yeah.
And my mom's boyfriend was like, "Yeah, but you said that about before your exam this morning." And I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
you're right."
Yeah. And you
So it's
probably said it prior to that too.
probably, yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's
Yeah.
incredible. But I have kind of noticed that in other regards. Like when I get back from a trip, if I say, "Oh, I'm tired, I will unpack later," it'll take me a week. And then I'll get fed up enough of seeing my suitcase and I'll unpack.
Yeah.
So when I get home now, I just call it keeping my momentum because if I
Yeah.
sit and I start to watch TV, I'm not going to do anything that I said I was going to do because I've already
Yeah.
gotten that dopamine response, right? So
Yeah.
I will do my chores, do my laundry, go to the gym, and then when I'm showering and sit down, like that's when I know it's time to relax because there's nothing that I wanted to do or
Yeah.
that I was saving for later that I could fully enjoy my relaxing time because I didn't also have that tug like, hey, you shouldn't really be doing this because you're never gonna feel amazing resting if you're guilty about
Yeah.
resting. You're never gonna feel amazing getting high, like your example, if you really wish you weren't. Like if you're always at war with yourself, you're not able to fully enjoy either side of it and
Yeah.
may as well work with yourself to separate the sides so that you can enjoy both.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's really what resistance is this war going on between us, this battle of like, I want to do this, but then I don't want to do this. And you talked about how resting, if you feel guilt, well, there goes that pain thing again. So even in something that could be positive and helpful, we have a hard time doing if there's pain around it.
Mhm.
And so then, we work on that. And yeah, it is a pretty complex thing. And I want to help people understand that because what I found with traditional personal development and a lot of the stuff that's out there, it's that it's overly motivational and inspirational. It's saying you can do it, you have unlimited potential and all of that. And that stuff is great. And it releases these like really euphoric feelings that gives us this dopamine hit. But the actual doing it actually removes those feelings. And because we like being in the feeling, we'll go and get another dopamine hit of inspirational and motivational content. So a lot of times people think because they are focused on the inspirational side and motivational side and not watching junk content that they're being better. But I want them to realize that it's the same exact thing that they're doing. They're just swiping to get that dopamine hit
Yeah, they're
while they're
consuming instead of doing.
yeah, exactly. And they think because the thing they're consuming is better than what others are consuming or the alternative, that it's good. But it may not be if they're still just doom scrolling and just, getting that dopamine hit. And yeah, there were a couple of things that did come up as you were saying all of that. And yeah, like there's a lot going on that does, help for us to be aware of because we hear that phrase, you are your own worst enemy. Well, I think now people get why that phrase is so popular. Resistance is this enemy within. It's this part of us that holds us back. And this resistance is so good at keep holding us back. Like I said, the tricks. It can convince us that our challenges are with the outside world. The reason we have difficulty in moving forward is because of what's going on externally, the people in our lives, the opportunities that we didn't get, and things of that nature. But almost all of it is internal. And yeah,
Hmm, absolutely. I mean, I like what you said about the overly motivational content. Um, it's not realistic, sadly, and
yeah,
I've been, not victim, but I have definitely dived into that realm.
yeah,
Um, and you're right, you're going for the dopamine and you're just reading another book and another book and another book instead of actually doing what the book
doing,
told you to do. And
yeah,
that's another escape of doing the hard things. But it's
yeah,
just a different way of obtaining the dopamine than a silly video or a cute puppy or something like that.
yeah.
And it makes me think about the get rich quick schemes. Like
Oh my God.
everybody wants that. Everybody wants to get rich quick and do it the easy way. The likelihood of that happening is so slim, but you're wasting time trying to do the get rich quick that you could be spending on building something.
Yeah,
And in my opinion, building something is a lot more rewarding than just winning the lottery and like, okay, like, did I really earn that? Do I,
yeah,
and what do I do now? So it's those small, hard tasks versus the big, beautiful picture that,
yeah,
it's, that's when the resistance really kicks in, right? Because it's like, okay, I knew I wanted to do this project, but I don't want to do the freaking tax forms,
yeah,
So,
exactly.
so how do you interact with those more menial tasks when it
Yeah.
comes to the big picture of your dream?
Yeah. So now I also remember one of the things I want to riff on. You said the brain naturally wants to do what comes easy. And I'm glad you brought up tax because taxes are pretty complicated, right? Like there's all these rules and sub rules and things like that. Do you want to know why taxes are so complicated? It's because of humans' nature of wanting to do as little as we can for maximum results. So there's two main purposes of tax. One is to generate revenue, and two, it's actually to influence our behavior. So if the government thinks that having people do certain thing will be beneficial, it'll give us a tax break. For example, for investments, the government felt that it was good for people to hold on to investments for at least a year to give the companies that they're investing in an opportunity to grow, right? So they said that that's why they created the capital gains tax. So if you hold on to your investments for at least a year, you pay lower taxes on it. Or the government felt that was good for people to donate things instead of throwing things away, because then it doesn't have to spend money to provide that. And so if you donate, you can get a tax break.
Yep.
Now, the human brain's desire to maximize results and minimum effort tries to manipulate the system. And so the government has to come in and close those loops, which makes the tax law more complicated. And then we'll find other ways to find loopholes in the system. So the government comes in and closes those loops to make the law or the tax law more complicated. And it's constantly happening to the point what started off as a very simple thing becomes this very complicated tax law to close all these loops that we humans are trying to take advantage of to minimize effort to maximize reward. It's an inherent nature of us humans. We're constantly doing this. In fact, we don't even choose to do it. It's just happening on its own. So it's really important to be aware of it. Now, I try to work the reason I'm able to get a lot of results from my clients is because I work on the principles of the mind and body. I don't work on just the motivational, inspirational part. And I want to riff on that a little bit because most people may not even be hearing this perspective because almost all personal development content is pushing all this motivation and inspiration. It's easy to assume when we see that's all that's out there and that's what all people are jumping on, that that's a reality of it. I remember I would go to these seminars of like hundreds to thousands of people, and you'd have someone on stage pumping this motivation and everyone's like going crazy. I just assume that that was true because how could thousands of people be wrong? And when we're doing it on social media and we see tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of people following a particular type of content, it's easy to assume that that's accurate and that's what's going to get us results. When in reality, all people are doing is just getting this emotional hit. And then because they're feeling so positive, they click that like and comment and it feeds into the algorithm. So it gets spread to more people and the more people do it. And then these influencers see that, oh, this is what gets results. So I'm just going to keep pushing this motivational content. And then it creates this like feedback loop where if someone who doesn't understand this stuff comes in, assumes that this is the way. So I want people to understand that, hey, just because 90 to 95% of the people that you know are going in that direction doesn't mean that it's actually right. All they're doing is just getting a big dopamine hit.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
couldn't agree more. We are biological beings, and if you're only working with like if you're only working with dopamine, how can
yeah,
you expect to have these results that you're seeking?
yeah,
Sadly, there's not like one hack to win it all.
yeah,
That's why we coach, right? It's not that
yeah,
easy. You need to go on this journey and it's individualized and all of that stuff. But
yeah,
I would like to propose that resistance is actually a sign that you're moving towards something that matters because you care enough to resist. I think the things that we should be avoiding are the things that we feel neutral about.
yeah,
Like if I feel neutral about going into computer programming, I shouldn't do that. Even though maybe my body's like, oh, well, that's not scary because I'm neutral about it, so I'm not afraid
yeah,
of failing, so let's go into that.
yeah,
No, I'm scared of not being able to impact people the way that I want to, not being able to leave the world a better place than I found it.
yeah,
That's scary.
yeah,
So even though it is scary, though, it's more scary to me to not try
yeah,
and realize on my deathbed that I didn't. So it's a different type of fear, but it's resistance, and it's, in my mind, a green light.
yeah. And you're right, 100%. A lot of the things that we resist are usually the directions we should be going into, and in fact, what we truly want to go into.
Mm.
So resistance doesn't come up for any reason. There's usually a want and desire. And so we want something, and the brain evaluates it, and it says, "No, don't do that." And so we can equate that there is a want for it to go there. And that's where a lot of our growth is gonna come from, because when we do push through these resistance, we are pushing through these parts of ourselves that we get to work through and learn about. And that's when we really get to meet who we truly are. Is by pushing through the resistance and working through these inner parts. And the other aspect of it is there is two ways of getting joy and fulfillment. One is to try a bunch of different things and get that dopamine hit of the novelty, because novelty feels
Mhm,
good. In
mhm.
fact, there's a technical term for it, the novelty effect. So a lot of times, new behaviors or new environments, they don't create the positive result because of the actual behavior environment, but just because it's new, and we get that dopamine of it being new. And that new feels so good that where a lot of people are just going from one new thing to another, and they're getting dopamine hit. But there is also this feeling that we get from depth. The more we stick with something, the deeper we go into it, and the more we learn and kind of grow in that direction, there's also a really positive feeling that is not possible any other way. You can't get it from the new experience.
I
You can
think a
only
lot of it
get
is
it,
pride, right? Pride in
yeah,
oneself.
pride in oneself, but just the feeling of, um, okay, this is a really good example, is our pleasure is directly proportional to the pain that we put in to get it. And I have a really awesome story to share about this. So I have traveled to over 100 countries. And in the beginning, in the first part of my travel, I actually started in Colombia. It was in Medellin. And then I took a overnight bus to Santa Marta. And then from there, I took a shuttle to Cartagena. And from Cartagena, I took a catamaran to Panama. And it was during a part of the season that most sailors don't go because the waters are so rough. But because I didn't have much time, I picked one person who was willing to take that trip, and it was brutal. I got to Panama. I was in Panama for a few weeks, the capital, Panama City. Went to Bocas del Toro. From there, I took um, a speedboat into Costa Rica. I spent some time in one of the towns near the border of Panama, and then I got to San Jose. And in that journey, 6 weeks, I didn't have a single warm shower. It was cold showers or no showers. And then when I got to San Jose, I'm like, I'm gonna spend a little bit more money and stay in a little bit nicer place. And this place had a hot shower. Not only did it have a hot shower, but there was 2 knobs, so I could control the temperature of the water. Whereas before, every place I took a shower, there was 1 knob, and whatever temperature water came out was what you had, and it was often freezing cold. And again, oftentimes, I didn't have a shower. I was, at the beach, like, sleeping on hammocks and stuff like that. And I remember that day so vividly, because it felt so exhilarating. I literally felt like I won the lottery. I went on Facebook and I was telling people about it. Now, why did that shower feel so amazing? Because I went through the pain of 6 weeks without a hard shower. And so when I had it, it was amazing. Prior to that, it wasn't a big deal. It was like a normal thing for me. In fact, if I felt like it was my God-given right to have a hot shower, and if I didn't, I would get upset. So it was so enjoyable because I went through the pain to get it. So the more pain we go through to get something, the more joy we experience when we do get it. And a lot of people, especially in the Western culture, you see a lot of this depression and unhappiness, even though they have everything to be happy about. They're that way is because they're not doing anything that's creating the pain to lead to pressure. And you can't escape this principle. It catches up. And what I mean by that is if we cheat the principle and try to get pleasure without the pain, we pay the price. For example, when we go out drinking, we drink alcohol or consume, it gives us a lot of positive, good feelings. But the next day, we pay the price with the hangover. And then if we don't experience that pain and try to cheat it again by drinking more, then that's how addictions form. It's our way of trying to avoid the pain. And the more pleasure we seek without experiencing the pain, the more addicted we become to the thing and the harder it is to do anything else. So going back to doom scrolling, a little swipe can give us a lot of dopamine, right? But now we're getting all this pleasure without really putting in effort. But we have to pay the price because once we stop scrolling and get out into the real world, it's not as enjoyable as the
Yeah.
dopamine hit that we're getting. So we have to sit in that pain of it. And if we tell ourselves, no, I don't want that pain, I wanted the pleasure, and we go scrolling, that's where scrolling and addiction to these things starts to happen. And then we do pay the price because now we're just hooked on this thing that is keeping us from living life. And eventually we'll have to pay the price. Then our attention starts getting lower. We start having emotional issues and anxieties and things like that. So again, I like to work with the principles of the mind and body. And one of the most fundamental principles is that there is no pleasure without pain. And if we try to gain pleasure without the pain, we're going to have to deal with it. And if we try to avoid it, it leads to unhealthy behaviors that will lead us to experience pain. And
Yeah.
just to drive this point home, it's like with, eating junk food or sweets. We eat sweets, gives us a lot of pleasure. But then we have to experience the pain of the weight gain that we get or the sugar crash and things of that nature. And if we avoid that pain by eating more sweets or more junk food, then we're just creating more pain potential for more pain in the future in health. And the more that we're going to have to work out to get back into the fit shape that we initially were. So I know this is kind of long-winded, but it really drives that point that you're trying to get at, how there is a certain joy that we get from doing the work and putting in effort into something, and 100%, and this is why.
Yeah. I mean, the brain and the body are incredible in that regard. I think there's this mechanism, like you said, where if it doesn't feel like you earned it,
Yeah,
you can't enjoy it as much. I mean, if you lose weight by, I don't know, starving
yeah.
yourself instead of doing exercise,
Or the stomach staple
you're
thing
never
and
going to
all
be
these things.
satisfied. Yeah, you're like, why don't I feel satisfied? I didn't because
Yeah,
you didn't do the work, and you're
yeah,
always kind of questioning whether or not your outcome was deserved.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad you
yeah,
elaborated on that. I
yeah,
think it's something that people do every day, everywhere, and don't really talk or acknowledge that
yeah,
concept. So, as we're getting up to an hour, I would like to ask you a final question.
sure.
What can somebody do today that can start unraveling this resistance that they have or maybe didn't even know that they had?
That's a very good question because oftentimes I'm asked, when I'm doing a show or I'm on a podcast and I talk about there's a part of our brain that's designed to hold us back. And then one of the first questions I ask is, well, how does someone overcome resistance? And I'm glad that you didn't go there first because it really helps to understand anytime that we want to do something, that desire gets filtered through a host of criterias. And so, if a person wants to work through the resistance, they need to look at the criteria that's holding them back, and work through on moving past that. And so it's not a simple answer as what is this someone can to do, because we have to work on the specific issue that's coming up. And what works for one may not work for another criteria. In fact, what works for one can be counterintuitive to
Hmm.
another criteria, which is why I think some people do struggle when they're going through traditional personal development, because as it was for me, they'll be told, oh, this is your issue, you got to work on it. And when you do, either you don't get the results or things kind of get worse.
Yeah, that one size fits all is not the move, not for your health, not for anything.
Yeah.
You could be allergic to oxalates and be
Uh,
told to eat a bunch of spinach, and you're
yeah,
over here like being poisoned. It's
exactly.
totally.
Yeah. But there is one side of it approach, and that is self-talk. So for those who don't know, self-talk are statements that you say or repeat to yourself of the changes that you want to have and have happen. For example, if a person wants to become a better dancer, recently I took on dancing, and so I created a set of self-talk statements for myself. I am an excellent dancer. I learn and pick up moves easily. I remember all the moves and execute them with precision and control. I maintain correct posture, frame, hand position, and move my partner and body to the rhythm and beat of the music. Now, why self-talk works so well is because words are powerful. It has a big influence on the brain. In fact, a lot of our resistance actually came from words. Teachers saying your work wasn't good, parents saying you can't sit still, bosses saying other things. And those words seep into our unconscious and create the walls in our lives. Now, if the words have the power to bring us down, they naturally have the power to bring us up. But the way the brain works, it puts more weight on the negative than the
Yeah.
positive. So it takes more positive words to counteract the negative. This is where self-talk comes in because you repeat these statements over and over. I have a huge set of self-talk statements that I am repeating on a regular basis, and they work to neutralize the different aspects of resistance in my life. Though in my journey and working with, hundreds of clients and thousands and thousands of people, I have come across like very basic things people are seeking and the resistance that's holding them back. So I've created a couple self-talk statements that can really unravel their resistance. So the first statement is I'm a do it now person. I easily do things now. I easily accomplish my goals right away. And I'm going to quickly go into the psychology behind why I created this. The first part, I'm a do it now person, creates that self image and identity of a person
Mhm.
that does things now. So when a desire comes up, the brain filters through this and it says, oh, I'm a do it now person. So it makes it easier to do it. The second part is I easily do things, and that's important because doing things can be annoying and painful. Like, it's just awkward and it doesn't feel good. But by saying, I easily do things now, we are training the brain to make whatever we're trying to do more easy. And the last part is the most important part. I easily accomplish my goals right away because it's easy to do a lot of things and just spin ourselves in circles. And a lot of people do that. And that's one of the ways resistance manifests. But if we train the brain to do things for a specific goal or end, we're moving in a direction that's gonna get us results. So I'm a do it now person. I easily do things now. I easily accomplish my goals right away. The second statement is I deserve, have permission, and am having good things. And I'll break the psychology down. I deserve is what I found when I take people into their unconscious over and over and over is a big root of their resistance is undeserving. There's a part of them that doesn't feel deserving of the success, even though consciously they do. Even though the consciously they worked hard, they should get it. A deep down feeling is saying, no, I don't deserve it. And that feeling can come for a lot of reasons. But regardless of the reason, it's there. So by saying I deserve, we're counteracting that. And then I have permission. What's really interesting is also, as we're growing up, we're constantly told what to do, how to do it, when not to do it. So it trained the brain to seek permission to do things. And what I have found is all the coaching people are paying for and the seminars they're attending and the personal development they're listening to, at the most basic level, they're doing all that to have someone give them permission to do what it is that they want. And they don't have to pay anyone. They can just do it, give themselves permission by saying, I have permission. And the third part of the statement, I'm having good things, is the action of having the good things that they're seeking. They can replace that with, I'm having great things, I'm having good relationships, I'm attracting positive, whatever. But you want to add something that will create the end result we're seeking. So if a person can repeat these two statements, I'm a do it now person, I easily do things now, I easily accomplish my goals right away, I deserve, have permission, and I'm having good things, it will unravel a lot of what's holding them back and put them in forward movement action without having to go through all the stuff that's going on internally that we talked about, which just scratches the surface of
Yeah.
what is going on inside the human mind and body. It makes it so much easier. And I repeat these statements all the time. When I'm driving, I'm repeating it. When I am waiting in line, anytime where I'm not doing something and I could be in my head, in the shower, when I'm cooking, cleaning, even if I'm like eating, the statement is constantly running in my head. And if people want to know how much that statement has helped, well, I have written over a dozen books. Well, pre-ChatGPT, I have traveled to over 100 countries. I have done some of the most amazing things you can imagine, swimming with ha- whale sharks, scuba diving with hammerhead sharks, sleeping in the oldest rainforest in the world, hiking the largest ice sheet in Greenland,
Wow.
developing a concept like internal resistance that no one is really talking about, and even this technique. So it's helped me do a lot. And if I were to come down to the foundation, it really comes down to the self talk that I've really committed myself to repeating, this technique that I developed that helps people go into their unconscious, and, just controlling the people and the environment that I'm in. Those things have been pivotal in helping me do the things that I have.
Totally. I mean, it's what you focus on. It's
Yeah,
going to grow. I mean, if you focus on having abundance,
yeah,
then you're not thinking about having scarcity. And
yeah,
that's why people often like skip over affirmations and self-talk like that, but it is so powerful because your
yeah,
brain is on autopilot half the time and you're creating these emotions by these automatic thoughts that were created maybe not even by you. It could have been like your mom said something so many times that you're repeating
yeah,
it to yourself that you're unworthy or anything of that nature. And
yeah,
like you said, the negative is far easier to hold on to than the
yeah,
positive evolutionarily. Like
yeah,
if your body was made to one, okay, two situations. You're being chased by a lion
yeah,
because you tried to steal its food.
yeah,
You're not going to do that again. The fear was huge. The
yeah,
stakes were high versus I found some berries that don't kill us when we eat
yeah,
them. Very nice. I'll find them again. You get
yeah,
some dopamine, but the don't do that again, that is a
yeah, the
huge, huge reason.
adrenaline, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
So,
So I just want to rip on that
mhm,
really quick. Um, so because these two statements I've given is just so foundational and what really deep down all of us are seeking. We're the tagline for my business is Kam Knight, do more, live more. And the reason it's that is because I realize at the most basic level, people are wanting to do more in life, do more so they can live more and better. And so these statements really hit on what people are really seeking. And it's part of, a lot of the one-on-one work or any other work that I do. In fact, almost all my books, I dedicate a chapter to self-talk. And I've noticed the people who will actually repeat the self-talk I gave them, I'll always get some sort of text message or message from them saying, wow, those statements are so magical. Like, I'm surprised they work so well. And when somebody comes back with a problem, I know they weren't repeating the statement. In fact, I
uh,
have a guy who has been reaching out to get free coaching and mentoring from me. And so I told them, hey, I want you to repeat the statements I just shared with you guys. And every time he comes back, I'm like, you haven't been repeating the statements, have you? And he'll try to give these roundabout excuses to avoid saying no, like, oh, yeah, I repeat self talk on a regular basis. I'm like, how often have you been repeating the statements I gave you? And then he won't respond.
Mm.
And I can tell when someone is repeating a statement because of the shift that happens.
Uh-huh.
And because if they're repeating a statement, they will almost always come back to me and be like, wow, I can't believe it was that easy.
May I ask, so there is a certain part of the brain that resists, of course, if you don't believe the statement you're saying is true. Like if I were
It,
chronically ill and I kept telling myself, I am healthy, I am healthy, I'm healthy, there's a part of your body that's and your brain that's going to resist. So of course, if you don't believe what you're saying, it's not going to have the same effect. Um, and
I, t-
I
I,
think your prompts are virtually perfect because you can convince yourself of those things.
yeah,
But the right now is what got me because if I say that to myself and then I try to do a task and it's not immediate results, then maybe I won't believe it the next time I say it. Does that make
yeah.
sense?
Yeah, so this is the great thing about self-talk. You don't actually have to believe it to get the results. I was repeating these statements, and I have other statements, and some statements I still don't have belief in them when I say it, but I know they got results, so I still say it. So even a lot of the negative that's playing in our head, we don't actually fully believe those negative, but that's the outcome that's coming in our life. And so I know a lot of times people will resist because they don't believe it or they
Mm.
don't think it's true, but it doesn't matter. Self-talk doesn't require belief. All it requires is repeating it. And this is important thing to say. So a lot of times when I give people these statements, they think it's about writing it down or putting it in their mirror or looking at it. But I use the word self-talk over affirmations because it's about actually talking it. So you have to repeat it verbally or in your head. It can't just be on your dashboard or on your computer
Saying it
screen that you're
aloud is so powerful, though.
saying it aloud is more powerful. So
Yeah.
there's levels.
Do it in the
So
car.
yeah, and I do it in the car. Like if I'm in my car, I am repeating self-talk out loud. That's all there is to it. And I have different statements I repeat at different times. So when I wake up in the morning, I have a set of statements that I repeat. When I am going to bed and laying in bed, I have another set of statements I repeat. When I'm
Those are
in the
your
car,
most susceptible times when your
those are the
brain's
most,
most open to suggestion. So
yeah.
brilliant.
And then when I'm in the car, I have another set of statements, and they're all hitting on different areas that I want to move forward in or different blocks that I have. And so there are levels with self-talk. It's one is just repeating it. You can repeat it with no belief and even contempt, like this is not going to work, and it'll still work. Then the next level is saying it out loud. Then the next level is saying it with belief, like, hey, I do believe this is true. And the next level is saying it out loud with belief and positive emotions. If a person can do it in that way, that's the best. But just because people can do it that way doesn't mean that they shouldn't just repeat it, because it'll still have a good effect. And if they repeat it long enough, they'll be able to move to the next and the next level.
Yeah.
So now when I say I'm a do it now person, I easily do things now. I accept it and believe it more because I've seen myself do a lot of things.
Yeah.
Like the
Absolutely.
things I'm doing is I'm really proud of, and I never thought of I could do it before. And again, if someone's heard this podcast from beginning to end, they can see that I'm dropping a lot of deep knowledge, knowledge that's not being talked about, that's very counterintuitive. And self-talk helped me do the things to develop this knowledge, develop the ability to articulate it and show up on stage. In fact, there was a point where I wasn't a good communicator or speaker. I would stumble, stammer, a lot of you knows, and what came out of my mouth wasn't really coherent and didn't make sense. And I wanted to work on that. Do you know how I did it? I created statements. I am an excellent communicator. I easily communicate my thoughts, ideas, feelings, experiences, and more. I can write about and verbalize anything. These three statements I repeat every single day, and I feel I've gotten a lot better at communicating both in the written word and the verbal word. So they can help. And in the beginning, when I was repeating these statements, I'm like, I am not any of these things.
Mm.
But through experience, I've learned that if I do it enough, I will it will just start creating the results. And when I see the results, it will create the beliefs, and that'll become the positive feedback loop.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely even just listening to affirmations, like, when I first got up in the morning, sometimes I would record my own in my own voice and
Yeah.
then repeat after in my head, um,
Yeah.
but even other people's recorded affirmations, especially in those susceptible times when your brain is open to those things, it makes a difference, but what you're saying, doing it actively and for yourself, inside yourself, or
Yeah.
aloud, especially aloud, is another level. Like,
Yeah.
if you didn't feel ready and you wanted to start subliminally, yes, you could listen to
Yeah.
other people, but the more power comes from
The active.
making your own.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because it applies specifically to you, or at least tailoring yours to your own or something like that. So absolutely, I love that, and I hope we get more people doing that.
Yeah, yeah. And again, it's one of those things where very few people see the power in it, but the ones who are willing to do it, they get massive results. In fact, when you look at some of the biggest celebrities and influencers like The Rock, Oprah Winfrey, Tony Robbins, they all attribute self-talk to a lot of their success. Like they're literally saying, this was what got me here. And so it has a lot of power.
Seems too simple, I think, for a lot of
Yeah,
people.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. Thank you for everything, Cam. I'm so
yeah,
excited to share your message with everyone, and I love what you're doing. Thank you for being here,
yeah.
and I hope we get to keep in touch.
Yeah, we'll stay in touch. And I just want to let your listeners know where they can find me.
Perfect.
Um, they can find me at my website, kamknight.com, KAMKNIGHT.com. If they want any books, and I have over 10,000 reviews on my books on Amazon, so they can get them on my website. That course I talked about, Conquer Internal Resistance to Achieve Your Next Goal, I have an online course, and they can get access to that from my website as well. If they did want to work one-on-one with me, like I said, I have developed this technique that allows us to go into their unconscious and work on the resistance directly. They can reach out to me at mentor, mentor, at kamknight.com.
Okay. Awesome. And I'll have you send me all of that so I can put it in the show notes as well.
Sure.
Um, Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Samantha. This
All
was
right.
great.
Have a
Yeah.
great rest of your day.
You too.
Thank you so much, Cam. You've reminded us that resistance isn't the enemy, it's the invitation. It's your nervous system whispering, here's where the work matters most. And when you stop fighting resistance and start listening to it, you find clarity, you find confidence, you find courage waiting just beyond it. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with a friend who might be staring at their own invisible wall. And remember, resistance doesn't mean stop. It means pay attention. Your growth is right there waiting. All right. This has been Shine In and Out. Thank you for being here. And until next time, keep shining.